7 o'clock or just shortly thereafter. And by that time, it's time to call this meeting to order. And we are calling this meeting to order with 7 members present. And at this time, if you stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
That's kind of more fun during the Olympics.
Yeah, it is. It is. Okay, item 7, or 7? Wow, okay.
Wow,
You're
that
jumping.
was fast.
It's a fast meeting. Well, you know, we got to get done in an hour. There's a game to play.
Yes, we do.
I
Move
move
to
we
approve
approve
the
the agenda. Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion carries 7-0.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, item 4, comments from the public. Okay, and I do believe that we have one speaker this evening, Mr. Woogie. You do have 5 minutes, and I would remind you, as always, that please make sure that we're not addressing individual identifiable people.
It won't take 5 minutes.
Pass that down to Teresa.
In about 3 days, the miracles will stop happening because people won't be walking on water. It's going to thaw.
Yeah.
You got to keep up with me. We, at our house, have a lot of efficient things, and I kind of keep up with the technology. And over a period of time, you bought lights, you know, for different things. And everything is changing so much with the technologies. We've had mercury vapors, which was a thing, and of course there's heavy metal in those, and then the sodium vapors and halogen and halides and LEDs, and at our house we got very efficient furnaces and point-of-use water heaters and tankless water heaters, and so our bills aren't very much. And you guys, as you update things, you need to kind of keep that in mind. The LEDs is one of the latest technology. It's just a light emitting diode, which you can take they're rated in three things. It's wattage, of course. They take about 1/6 of the energy. How'd you like to cut your lighting bill in half? It'd be 50% efficiency, but basically this is 6 to 1, 16%. It's just super, and they're dimmable. We've got one there that I read with, and the old yellow light. It was a 50, 100, 150, and 20 minutes. Just seemed like I was tired, but now the light's good. They're rated in 3 different ways. It's wattage. Of course, the 60 watt pulls about 8 watts. And we're replacing the mercury vapor lights because you're not supposed to be within 20 feet of them because there's it's not healthy. But we need to keep the new technology. I just love the LED lights. I don't know what it's going to do, but can you imagine just spending 1/6 in the energy? And that's what I had to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. And I believe that's our only speaker this evening, so we will move on to item 5.01, math results. Dr. Stroh.
All right, first we're going to look at the AMO, which means Annual Measurable Objective 2013 Summary. And you'll recall that board goal number 2 is to monitor our curriculum assessment and instruction. And so this report tonight has to do with that particular goal. Really, there's two essential questions when it comes to results and assessments. The first question is, how do we do as schools and as a district compared with others in the state and others in the nation? So that's question one that I'll try and answer tonight. The second question is, what are we doing to get better? Because it's always about continuous improvement, okay? So as we look at this, you'll recall this is exactly what we looked at when we talked about the reading results back in November. So I want to call your attention to the math results sort of in the center of the page. You'll see math, move right there, okay? This is a new formula for measuring growth with the Kansas assessments. And you'll see that our score, our AMO, was, I'm going to have to look at my list, 668. And the expected gain, we should have been 40 points higher than that. We did increase, if you go down to the next little graph, whoops, right there, you'll see that we did increase from, actually we dropped a little from 2012, okay? The reason for that is the expectation is that we grow every year. So if we don't grow at a quicker speed than is expected, then we start to fall behind and we have negative numbers, okay? If you look over, see the red ball, that is where we are in terms of the state. We are at the 49th percentile, just about dead center. If we were at 50th percentile, we would be green. So we're just a little bit under where we should be in comparison to the state. Then if you look at that last column on the bottom of that right-hand side, that tells you the whole idea of the state assessments and this new way of measuring is to reduce the non-proficient kids. In other words, we want to move kids who are in the bottom quartiles, we want to keep moving them up. And so that shows you the percent of kids that we need to continue to move up. So for example, when we look at all students, we need to continue to move 3.67% of those kids, of all our kids. Then as you go down, you see our subgroups. Free and reduced lunch, we need to increase that. Our non-proficient kids, we need to increase them by 3.3%. And so on. You can see that when it tells us that we have less than 30, that means we don't have a subgroup. You have to have 30 students in a particular category to have a subgroup. Okay? So we don't have, for example, 30 or more kids in English language learning. Okay? So as you go down, you can see our areas that we need to work more on. Just because we don't have a subgroup doesn't mean we don't look at those individually and try to increase their non-proficiency level. Now, part of this I need to remind you is that the state assessments are changing. Okay? So while we can look at this data and we can compare it to last year and it's valid, next year we won't be able to compare because this spring we're taking transitional assessments, which means these assessments that we'll be taking this spring will not have any connection with the assessments that we took last spring. Okay? So in essence, for state assessments, we're starting from ground zero. Okay? So that's state assessments. The next thing we're going to look at is the growth index, I think. Yeah, growth report. Okay, so what this shows you by school and by district, you remember the little red ball, we were at the 49th percentile. So this shows you by school where each of our schools were. Okay, so for example, Eugene Field, 54, so they were just a little bit past the middle. Okay, Garfield, barely past the middle. Lincoln, remarkably past the middle. middle school quite a ways below, and the high school significantly below. Now, as we go through this, I'm going to explain some of the reasons for these scores and the things that we're doing to improve. Okay? So let's look at the reading and, let's look at it's called Reading and Math, MAP, but we need to look at page 2.
Reading and math, is that the one you want?
Uh-huh, that's the one. Yep, okay. So if you'll look at the legend in the right-hand top, really not corner, but towards the right-hand side, you'll notice that the red is below typical growth. Typical growth would be 9 months to a year, is what we expect in terms of growth for students every year. Yellow is above typical growth, but below proficiency. So in other words, that means that a kid might have a 1.5 year gain in math, but still be below proficient. That's an important group because those are the kids that we can move rather quickly into the green or into the proficient level. Okay? The significance of this assessment, which is the MAP, we call it the MAP, it's Measures of Academic Progress. The significance of this is that it not only measures us in terms of other schools that take the MAP assessment in the state, but it also measures us nationally. So when we think about one of the questions we wanted to answer, how are we doing nationally? How are we doing regionally in terms of the state? This assessment helps us understand how we are doing more at a national level. The green is typical growth and at or above proficiency. So those are the kids that are doing well, that have typical instruction and continue to do well. The darker yellow or the orange is below typical growth. So they didn't make a whole year's gain, but they're still at or above proficiency. In other words, I might have been proficient last year. This year I take the assessment and I might have grown just a little bit, but I'm still proficient. We don't worry so much about that group where as long as kids are proficient and they continue to move ahead, we're good with that. Our biggest concern is always the red group, okay? The kids who are below. And remember that this is a nationally normed test. So if our kids went anywhere in the United States that also gave the MAP assessment, this is how they would do, okay? So we looked at the reading last November, so let's skip down and look at the math. Okay, right there. And you'll see, as a district, we had 21.3% in the red, okay? That is about average. You typically have about 20% of your kids that aren't quite proficient. Is it good enough? No, it's not good enough. We want to have every kid in the green, but that is kind of average. 9.6% or close to 10% of our kids made more than a year's growth, but are still not proficient. And then we have about 69% of our kids, which is about average, who are at proficiency or above. In other words, proficiency, when I talk about proficiency, I mean at grade level, okay? So then we look at individual schools, and you'll see Eugene Field is just about average, same average as the district. Garfield is a little higher than what we are as a district in each of those categories. Lincoln, kudos to Lincoln. They have a significant number of students who are proficient and above, and very few students in the red and the yellow. And in a little bit, I'm going to give you some information about why that is the case and what other schools are doing to get better and better. Then you'll see Ottawa Middle School. There isn't any data. They didn't take the fall assessment last year, so there's nothing to compare it to. It was a choice. They did take it this past fall and will take it again. So in terms of national data for the middle school, we don't have that, but we will have that next year. When you look at Ottawa High School, you'll see that we have too many kids really in the below proficiency and not a lot of gains. And there are some reasons for that, and there are many things that we can do to remedy that. We do have a significant amount of kids who are green and orange, in other words, who are on grade level and above. But you'll recall in high school that you don't take general math all 4 years. So if you're a sophomore and you're taking geometry, how much algebra are you going to remember? The other part of this is that typically at the high school level, the test is given the very first day or the second day of school. So we're not really testing deficits, we're testing out of practice. I mean, when you think of, if you come back to something first day or the second day, are you going to remember the formulas and how to work those and so on? So those are some things that we will continue to work on. So let's look at the map by grade, I think. That's a reading. Page 2. Yeah. Okay, so if you look at this assessment, really we give this assessment in grades 3 through 11. And I know it's really a big celebration when you see second grade, but if your eyes will move to the right, where it says count, you'll see at the very top, we tested 751 kids altogether, but one second grader, and he did really well, or she. So it is, hooray for the kid. It does make that graph look very nice, but what happens is we don't test kids. We test them at the beginning of second grade with their fall, but their scores aren't compared until the fall of their third grade year. This student happened to have a fall to fall because he or she spent another year in second grade. So that's why we have the 100%. As cool as that would be to see everyone. And so you'll see where we are in terms of each of the grade levels. And, you know, whether you like looking at percents or you like looking at the color charts. And again, we don't have data on the 7th and 8th grade because they didn't take it fall to fall. Okay. You'll notice that in 11th grade, we have a significant downturn in proficiency. And a lot of that has to do with testing out of practice rather than testing proficiency. They are testing, I believe it's either the first or second day of school. Kids are coming back, they're more interested in their friends, and they're more interested in a lot of other things. So Dr. Cobbs and I have talked about ways that we can help kids be, more serious about the assessment, because that's another piece of it when you're in high school, especially the 11th grade, you know that college is coming soon or whatever is coming soon, and so you don't take things as seriously as we want them to. Okay? So let's look at the ACT, because this is the math that kids who are very serious about what they're going to do after graduation. And you can see another national test. So how do we compare nationally? We do have more than the average number of kids take the ACT. And you can see that we're either dead even with the state, which is pretty even nationally. A couple of algebra, geometry, trig, you'll see we're just about 1 point below. Others, we're 1 point ahead. So we're pretty average in terms of mathematics at the high school on the ACT. We are higher in terms of how many kids take that assessment. Okay? So I believe that's all.
Why do we have more kids taking the ACT?
It's highly encouraged to take it. And you know how high school kids are. If your friends are taking it, you take it, and so on. It's a great test. That's one of the reasons we wanted to implement it across the whole high school, so every student gets at least one ACT score. We know that probably that's going to bring our scores down for a little while, because we'll have, instead of having 130 kids or 60 kids or whatever, we'll have more like 180 kids taking the assessment. But eventually our scores will climb. So the second question is, so what are we doing to make things better? We're about average. About average isn't good enough for kids in Ottawa. So what are we doing to improve our scores? What are we doing to make our kids more proficient in math? The first thing, as I've said before, is we're working towards testing actual deficits instead of out of practice. And once we know what those deficits are, we analyze the assessment, we analyze the data, and we figure out what those deficits are. We have kids in small groups, work with teachers, and remedy those deficits. So whatever the scores are, whatever the kid needs, they work on that. This is one of the things that Lincoln has done. Garfield and Eugene Field started that earlier this past fall. So those things are really important. Another important thing is once kids know what their assessment data tells them, where they are, what their score was, what their deficits are, then to help them set individual goals. So that when they take the test in the winter, the MAP in the winter, then they know what score they need to get. And both Eugene Field and Garfield did that this past year, and I wanted to share just some of the exciting results that Amy and Shannon shared with me. That at the third grade level, at Garfield, there was about a 7% gain from fall to winter. In third grade at Eugene Field, it was about a 5-point gain for kids. And so at every grade level, there was gain from fall to winter because kids set goals and they knew what they needed to do. So that's another thing that we're doing. Another big part of this is the fidelity to the math program. That's huge. Whatever program we have is research-based, and if we follow it to the T, kids will learn. Kids will do better on assessments. It's when we divert our attention and we use a little of this and a little of that there's not fidelity to the program. And so when that happens, our scores are going to fall. And we're working on a new math curriculum at the elementary level, which will be very supportive of what is happening and what is new at the middle school level and on into the high school. It's very research-based, and it's about numeracy and number sense at the elementary level. Another program that we're using at the elementary level to help kids with their basic skills is called MobyMax, and it's a digital program. And at Lincoln, Eugene Field, and Garfield, they all tell me that they've seen significant gains in kids who would be in the upper part of the red and that yellow part. Kids that are very, very low need something more significant, and we have programs for those students as well. And then, as we implement the ACT at the high school, it will raise the level of expectations for both teachers and students, and so we believe that will be very helpful. We also did some analyzing, and what we found was more than 40% of our kids who were in the red and yellow zone were kids who were new to us. In other words, they'd been in our district for less than a year. And so that's significant in that they hadn't been through our programs and so on. And what we need to know about that is that we need to be able to assess those kids within the first 3 weeks that they're in our schools as new students, and be able to diagnose the skills that they need and work with them in small groups. So that's another thing that we're working on.
Dr. Stroh,
Yes.
the students that are new to us,
Uh-huh.
that are showing the deficits compared to
Mhm.
our students, are we the only district that sees that, or is that something involved in the process of moving schools?
We're not the only district that sees that. In fact, that's a common thing in districts across the country. Typically what happens, a great number of kids who don't just move once, they move a number of times. And so a kid who might be new to third grade, say at Garfield, may have moved 3 or 4 or 5 times. And in that process, from kindergarten to third grade, moving 3 or 4 or 5 times, they might be out of school a week, they've had 4 or 5 different curriculums. They have a hard time putting down roots, connecting with teachers and with students in their classroom. So we know how to handle those kinds of things. Those are big challenges, but we have the skills and the know-how to handle those things. But that's a good question. It is not uncommon at all. In fact, moving is a risk factor for kids as they get older.
Dr. Stroh, do you think Common Core will help those kids?
Absolutely. That's part of the reason that we have Common Core, is so that kids across the nation will have the same skills, and the expectations will be higher than they ever have been before. So for kids who move, that's going to be very helpful for them. If they move once or if they move 3 or 4 times, the key for those kids is to get them in school immediately.
Get a question or comment, Susan?
Yeah, well, even within our district, I mean, we have the same number of move-ins to Lincoln that we do to the other 2 schools, but Lincoln still scored significantly higher. And that is a concern because these are the kids who need the most support.
Absolutely.
They're the at-risk kids, and so we've got to,
Well,
I think.
and if I remember right, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lincoln had piloted this small group process
Yes.
ahead of the other 2 schools. So the fact that they have higher gains is not as much a concern this year for me as it might be next year.
Yeah. And, well, they piloted early, but they also really worked on their math curriculum and practiced with fidelity, because that was the one thing that Vicki Schweinler had pushed, and I think Josh has been continuing that effort too. So I think when our most at-risk kids are needing the most support, we've got to step up and really do the fidelity as much as we can. I mean, we've all struggled with that as a board. How do we ensure that there's that fidelity and then eventually accountability?
I'd say we're making strides, but we still have a ways to
Yeah,
go.
Absolutely. And accountability is the end result. And I think that when we look at all the things that we can and should do and things that are already implemented, that accountability piece, how are we going to do in the end, is coming. I mean, I think it's important to remember that this is a journey, and not a destination. Are we ever going to get to 100%? Probably not. But
Wait a
that's
second. I thought that legislation a few years back took care of that.
You talking about the Lake Wobegon
well.
effect?
Then they had.
I thought 2 years ago we were supposed to be at 100%.
We were.
Yeah.
Actually, it's this year,
year.
2014.
14.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right.
But the biggest thing is we get better. We get better and better and better. Mr. Catlin?
My thought was, you're talking about at the high school level, that you're testing out of practice, not deficiencies. Is that test mandated to be the first or second day, or can they nudge that back maybe a couple weeks and give them a
Yes.
chance to review a little bit?
Yes, yes. They can move, we can move it back. There's a test window, so we can open it up to the high school whenever they need to. They've tried to be very efficient in getting kids grouped and so on. But I think in that process, they've kind of shot themselves in the foot, really. So, yeah, yeah. Other questions that you have?
Yeah, they were using the test as a norming tool to move kids into groups for more focused instruction. Is that
In
right?
reading, they don't have that focused instruction at the high school in math.
Right.
Right,
And
that's
so by
absolutely.
doing that, they've kind of
Yeah,
blown off a toe.
yeah, yeah. Mr. George, did you have a question?
It's just, you should
Okay.
do it the first day on school back.
Yeah. Other questions that
Like,
you
you
have?
go the first day of school to take a test.
Take a test, a hard test.
Any other questions for Dr. Stroh?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, at this time, we're on to item 5.02, board reports. Anybody have any board reports? Okay.
Well, went to Garfield's Wax Museum on Friday.
Garfield's Wax Museum.
Mm-hmm.
Are they dipping students in wax?
No.
Yeah, they always do that for Kansas Day.
Yeah, they do it for Kansas, and they're all famous Kansans, and they tell us about
Oh,
who they
yeah,
are.
okay, I
Dress
remember
up
that
and-
now.
Yeah.
They dress up in costume, and they did a great job.
Cool.
They did, and their costumes were very good. I was impressed.
Yep.
Well, I was involved, I took a couple of community people through, with Dr. Cobbs and Mr. Bland, through Ottawa High School, and then also through Eugene Field, which was an eye-opening experience for them, so.
That's good. That's a good thing.
Any other reports? Do we have need for executive session for negotiations?
Only personnel.
Okay. So we can, unless somebody has a real need to have an executive session for negotiations, we can skip item 6 and move on to item 7, which would be the approval of the Lincoln change order. And I believe you get to explain to us what we're going to do here.
And why we can't get it for free. And why we can't get it for free.
Labor, labor, labor.
I know.
Did they get that
The whole
paperwork?
packet, yes.
Okay. Well, the process is going to be now to take all the panels off, the existing panels off the roof before new panels can be installed. And with the weight limitations of the existing substructure, they can only take 2 or 3 panels off at a time, set 2 or 3 new panels on the roof, and then get those installed before the next process and on down the line. And normally it would have been stock stacks of 8 or 10 panels all the way down the roof, so you're just taking panels off and putting panels on, so there's a tremendous amount of crane time and labor time to do it now with the substructure not being able to support the weight. And that all stemmed from the structural report that was done by Wayne at
This concerns me a little bit about the replacement of vinyl insulation if needed. Any estimate on what that's going to run into?
There shouldn't be any, I mean, we're reusing the existing insulation and unless there's any damaged.
That's what I'm wondering.
But, I mean, there's no real way of knowing that until you get the panels off. But, you know, in past experience, nothing's getting to that insulation other than maybe a few square feet where you've had some leaks and some problems. But, you know, that hadn't been real extensive. Most of that's been perimeter stuff and detail areas.
When I first read this, going down through here, there's one place where add is all capitals, and I thought, well, they're ADD too.
Yeah.
But
Go.
that wasn't what it meant, I guess, so.
So the primary, again, just to clarify, the primary reason for the additional expense is the fact that you're going to have a crane here for a longer period of time, and you're going to be moving. You
Slower.
can't just move equipment up, move the pieces up there and stack them. You're having to move them up as needed.
2 or 3 pieces at a time, right?
Yeah.
And just to really going to slow down the process. And hundreds and hundreds of hours of additional crane time.
So are you essentially having to tear off, put down, tear off, put down, put new up, tear off, put down?
Yep.
So whatever is coming off, you're having to put just that much back up, and then
Right, and with the weight of the panels and the limitations of the substructure, that's limited to 2 or maximum of 3 panels at a time.
so you can't add anything until you take 1 or 2 off.
Right.
Can we have 2 cranes for half the time? Would that be cheaper? I mean, yeah.
No.
Well, I mean, it could
work
be if
at
they
it. I
had,
mean, seriously.
if they had 2 cranes and 2 crews, the problem is manpower and,
having that many guys up there with tools to get panels on and off quick.
right?
Okay.
Because they're gonna be humping to get those panels on and off as it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a slow process, without a doubt. And then, you know, at the end of each day, however many panels they get, they're gonna have probably 2 hours of their day at the end of each day making that last seam watertight overnight, just in case rain would come in overnight. So the building's gonna be, for a night seal, and then they'll peel the night seal off the next morning and start from there again. But the goal is that the building stay in 100% watertight condition, or at least as much as it is now during the construction process.
Have you had any leaks in the gymnasium area?
Towards the one entry, I think previously they've had, but I don't know currently. They've done so much
That's
now.
on the southwest corner, kind of?
This-
I know right as you come into between the gym and the cafeteria.
Oh.
Yeah, it was
in
the
the
southeast
interior.
corner, I know, where
The
there were some
interior
leaks.
entrance, okay.
So, Mr. Leslie, if we were able to start this during spring break, which is around the 15th of March, when would you expect it to be done? Is this a 4-month, 5-month thing?
Now, with this process, it's probably 5 or 6 month process. And hitting by spring break, I mean, we're really gonna have to push the envelope now at this late date to get them out there by spring break. But any of that part that would be done, they would start on those canopies, which does not encompass any classrooms or any student or
But we're gonna
occupied
have a crane
areas.
sitting on site for 5 to 6 months?
Yeah, well, it's not the big structural crane
Oh, I
you
know,
see,
but-
it's on, so at night,
Track crane.
yeah, they'll probably pull it away from the buildings, but yeah, it's gonna be sitting out there.
Is it cheaper to buy one?
They own one,
I don't know.
but cheaper for you guys to buy one?
Yeah, I'm just
It
asking.
might be.
I don't know. You know, if you rent a car for 6 months, you gotta buy that thing. I mean, you know, you hope.
Just one question, did he break down the number of hours he's adding or the number of labor hours per adding?
He did not.
I'm not gonna stop the project, but I have an uncomfortable level of just still not having a detail on how he is thinking in his head, since there's still the other ads. What happens if it's sitting there longer, or there's bad weather days, or there's a wind day? I'm not gonna stop the bid, I'll go along if it's the board wishes, but for me as an accountant, this isn't very good documentation.
Right.
For,
Well,
and I'm sorry, this is 2 times, I might not have been clear, and I apologize, but when I saw this, in the future, I'd just like to see he's adding this
Itemized.
amount for crane time,
Okay. I do know that they own their crane, and he's only billing for work days on it. He's, it's
I
mainly an
understand,
operator.
But again, this goes
Right.
against my whole accounting principles, so I'm not gonna stop the project. But, it disappoints me that it didn't come back with, but you threw out a lot of stuff. You did the old good board member thing, throw me a good little document, but I was wanting to know what made up the
Okay,
157.
and we can still ask for that.
I thought that's what I did, so I'm not gonna stop it, it's just,
I think it's appropriate that we go ahead and ask for a detail, a line-by-line bid.
On the change order, right. Yeah, and I think that's due diligence. I mean,
but did I not make that request last time?
I
thought you
didn't hear
did.
it.
I thought you did.
I apologize if I'm offending any of the
No.
board members. I thought I made that pretty clear when you were
I
saying.
just thought we wanted a copy of his change order is all I heard, but
Well,
that's
provided
not saying you didn't ask that. That's all what I just happened to hear.
And we provided the shop drawings with this.
Yeah, the
as
shop
well,
drawing is
so you
here.
Saw what the work is gonna be accomplished. Also, on normal construction jobs, you don't pay for, weather days. You don't pay for rain.
I don't need it, I apologize. I've been through construction before. This is not the accounting detail I wanted. I'm not gonna stop the project.
Yeah.
I wanted to see the hours, what
Right.
he's charging us for. This is still the same 157, so.
Right, okay, yeah, and I'll have him break that down, labor versus crane versus, an hours that he's figuring for.
Because what
for all
happens if
that.
something that we cause slows him up and then he wants to do an addition, because he does have an ear, you know, who's the time and material on insulation and other items. That's
Right.
still a big variable. And I just would like to know how many hours he's thinking the crane's gonna be. Because he's only thing slowing down is instead of having 8 on to have his crew go boom, 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 boom,
Right.
it's a rhythm thing to the job. And 157 sounds a lot, and I just would like to know.
Okay.
I'm not gonna stop the program, it's just, this is not, and I believe I asked for the detail of what made up the 157.
Okay, well, I can certainly get that. I mean, I'm sure Ron won't have any problem breaking that out from Boone.
Dennis, I think I can see where the confusion lies. I think you did ask for that, but I think the interpretation was a detailed drawing of what's being accomplished. And I don't think that necessarily, I don't think there was a connect between Mr. Leslie and Boone Brothers and what you were asking for. Although I do think you were right, that's what you asked for.
You very well
I
could
just
have.
don't think they understood what you were asking for.
I was very flu-bound when I was in here the last time and
We'd-
not feeling very well.
We've not had the best of luck with roofers.
That's to say the least.
Just a thought to say. Yeah.
At least on
And
those two
settlement of
buildings.
contracts.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
yeah.
we've had a hell of a
Yeah.
time with that.
And as of late, the latest projects, you've had actually pretty good luck, but in this whole process here, it has not been very well. And I think it goes beyond roofers, because the structural and GCs and everything has been basically criminal.
Substandard, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll get that breakout. I'll request that from Ron tomorrow, and you guys can have that. Because I'm here for you guys.
Yeah.
We're looking out for the Ottawa School District and what is best for you guys. So you don't have to go through this again, ever.
No,
You're a good salesman, I appreciate it.
Well, I mean, the legal stuff shouldn't happen. I mean, it just shouldn't.
right.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the Lincoln change order as presented.
We have a
Second.
motion- We have a motion and a second. Tim gave the second. Is there any further discussion?
And I would like to see the detail too,
The
Dennis.
line by line?
I want to-
Account, you know,
Yeah, I'll have him break that out and send it to Dr. Stroh. He did tell me he's going out of town till like next Wednesday, but he should still have it before your next board meeting.
At this point, I just don't want to see an add over.
Right.
When it comes down at the end, if he wants more for crane time, he better show why.
Right. And at this point, I mean, there would absolutely be no reason for any more crane time, because weather days don't matter. Right, the only thing that could matter would be is if you guys ask him to leave the
Or there's
site.
an oops, there's a
Yeah.
performance issue.
Right.
His people work a little slower.
Yeah.
We don't do a good job documentation. We're not on the job site every day making sure they're working. There's a lot of things that can
Yeah.
cause that.
And I will
City
bring you
manager.
updates, because I'll be on site and taking photos and progress reports and stuff, so you guys will have that and be informed through the whole process. I mean, I'll get it to Dr. Stroh, and if you guys want me to bring it to board members, I'm more than happy to.
Send it out to
So that's part of what I do as well, is to keep you through the whole process, to eliminate some of those items.
okay. Hearing no further, is there any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the Lincoln change order signify by raising your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. So that you have your change order.
Isn't there some policy we could change?
I'm sure that we could probably change some policy if you just really are dying to do that, but
Oh, man, I'm itching to do
I'm
that.
ready to make a move to
Yep.
approve the policies.
Second,
nobody wanted to hear them read again?
I love to hear Doctor read those, but that's okay, unless somebody has a question.
Anybody want him, we can have him read random policies.
Is there an inspirational policy you feel a desire need to read to us?
You feel a dying task to read to us.
Can we quiz you?
riveting.
Ribbon.
It was very riveting to have your interpretive reading last time.
Yes, you did, and I do appreciate that.
And the printout came across very nice, so.
Yes.
So we have a motion?
So Dennis made a motion to
I second
approve
it.
the policies, and Susan seconded it. So is there any further discussion about the riveting changes in policy? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving policies as have been previously read signify by raising your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Okay. Item 8 is executive session for personnel.
How long do you want?
I'd like about the first 5-10 minutes with just board, if we could, and then
Okay, and so maybe 15 altogether? or-
15 altogether is probably good.
Okay, I hate to go past tip-off, but. Mr. Chairman,
You can do
who's
it.
playing?
Who's playing?
Who's playing?
We still in baseball
I move that the
season?
board go into executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel matters for non-elected personnel, and that the board return to open meeting at 8:05 in this room. Executive session is required to protect the privacy interests of an identifiable individual, and that we invite Dr. Stroh in after about 5 minutes.
We have a motion and a second to go into executive session. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion carries 7-0.
And I move we come back into open
Second.
session.
We have a motion and a second to come back into open session. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Should breathe before I try to say all that. Motion carries 7-0. Item 8.3.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the extension to Dr. Stroh's contract through the 2015-2016 school year.
Second.
We have 3 seconds.
Seconds.
A second, third, and a fourth. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Motion carries 7-0. Okay, item 9,
We do not have one?
we do not have. So now we're on to item
We've
10.
been here, how many years haven't we been sitting here? I've never had that happen
I don't
before.
think, I couldn't
Never.
remember that either.
What's that?
Special meeting last
No,
Monday.
no personnel.
No
Oh,
personnel.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
All
crazy.
of our bus drivers and peers. and
I know, there's always a bus
stay-
driver askew somewhere.
stay
Adding
For a
or
whole-
For a whole
subtracting.
month.
Whole
Yeah.
week we had people
Yeah.
stay.
I mean, you're either adding or subtracting.
Announcements.
This week is parent-teacher conferences. So teachers and principals and staff are staying late and working hard on parent-teacher conferences. And their only reward is Friday, which they'll be so exhausted that Friday doesn't really matter. But we appreciate that. And I want to take this time to thank our facilities folks and custodians and transportation. In this horrible, horrible weather, they've all done such a fantastic job of making sure that our sidewalks and parking lots are all safe and driving carefully so that our kids get to school safe and sound. And so I want to extend my thanks to transportation and facilities and for teachers and for the staff and principals who have to stay inside all day. That's a
Yeah,
tough
that's a
deal.
bummer.
So anyway, thanks, and I promise it'll warm up day after tomorrow.
In time for
Followed
the
promptly
weekend.
by
Now,
mudslides.
how much are you defining warm?
30 degrees and above.
We'll promptly have mudslides and swamps after that.
Probably.
Are we gonna meet Saturday?
Yes,
15th.
Saturday is our board retreat from 8 a.m. Till noon. And we'll have rolls and coffee for breakfast, and we'll have, what are we having for lunch? Pasta. Pasta, yeah, yeah. And Dr. Meckel will be here from 10 to 12 to work with us on public relations and boardmanship and whatever questions you might have, so.
Okay.
School finance, will we have an answer from the Supreme Court?
Not yet.
No, we don't have anything
That
from the
will hit every
Supreme
news
Court.
media.
Should we do a fundraiser, like a pot that we put dollars in and we split it with, half with the district, half with the winner, and who they put what time they
Yeah,
release it?
we could have one of those betting charts.
Yeah, betting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always good to encourage gambling.
Well, that's what the Kansas Lottery does.
That's what the Kansas Lottery and the Gambling Commission and,
And we'll donate all the proceeds to the district because,
There you go.
yeah, it's a fundraiser.
We roll.
all righty.
I know, that's all I know.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Everybody go home, root for K-State.